Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm good, Adam. How are you?
Good, thank you. Just wondering if you had known at the start of the season what you know now, and I know there's no way of knowing what you know, knowing back then what you know now, would you have done much differently in terms of ticketing or anything relating to the game day experience? And Brad, I'll have a second question as well.
Tough question. I think the biggest thing we learned and adjusted to that we probably couldn't have predicted going into the season was specifically as it relates to the pods in the building. Our operations team, our ticketing team, our stadium staff, our event staff, they've all done a really good job of just coming up with a plan that met the objective of get our fans in the building safely. And so that was the first objective. We had to do it safely. And then as we learned week after week after week, we realized that people's safety tolerance changed over the season. So there weren't a lot of people excited to be in groups of 4 or 6 in the first part of the year. So they were really looking for 2s and 4s. And compliments to Dr. Archer and the health department, because we went to them and just laid it out. They bought into our plan, and then we went back to them and said, here's what's happening, here's what we would do differently, here's how it fits into the same plan, and they've supported us all along. So that's probably the biggest one, is the pod sizes.
Okay. Besides maybe some home field advantage and maybe some ticket revenue off the bands in the stadium this year, were there any beyond that?
Well, I think it was a huge statement on behalf of this organization to our fans and to the league that we were capable of doing this, and we felt it was really important. Having been to games where there's nobody in the building, it's just different, and different in, I believe, a negative way. It's just not the same game. It's not the same experience. You can compare between 15,000 fans and 75,000 fans, and it's not going to be exactly the same. But our players, coaches, I know personally, you feed off that energy. I mean, you feel it, and it does make a big difference. I go back to the original statement that Clark made. The challenge he put to us was find a way to get our fans in the building safely and get them there for the banner. And so, you know, have the opportunity first and foremost to be that first game, to show the sports industry that we could do this safely was really important to us. Proud that we were able to do that. But I believe it's had an impact on our season, every game we've had. And I frankly, I believe there is still a big advantage that'll help us in the playoffs with having our fans in the building.
Let's go next to Nate Taylor. Go ahead, Nate.
Hey, Mark, just to continue on this discussion, where are you guys in terms of how tickets may be next year, what the message will be for season ticket holders and for people who maybe have missed the opportunity to come into the stadium this year and looking forward towards next year?
Yeah, so we're in that time right now. We've got to start figuring that out on top of dealing with all the challenges that playoffs put in front of us. So that's our focus right now, is we got to get Sunday right, and then hopefully host another game before Super Bowl, and then we got to get Super Bowl right and everything we do around that. So we're in the planning stages. So much of it is directly impacted by where this virus goes, what happens with vaccines, what happens across other sports and other leagues and what they do, what happens with rules as it relates to gatherings and things like that. We do know and feel very confident of the fact that we found a way to get through this entire season, to host every single game this year safely. And we feel very confident we'll be able to do it again. Virus changes, things change. We'll have to figure out ways to deal with that. Hopefully it goes the other way, and we're able to get more back to 75,000 people back in the building. And then the ticket plans and processes will all relate to exactly what we're dealing with. So long way of saying too early to tell, but we are in the planning process, and we've got a couple different models that we're working to.
Let's go next to Sam McDowell. Go ahead, Sam.
Hey, Mark. One real quick one for you first. Is there any plans at all to assess what works this weekend and possibly change it for an AFC Championship game and add more tickets or anything?
Yeah, I like the way you think. I'd love to do that, but the reality is, based on where we are with the health protocols, our own safety protocols, the health protocols, the restrictions we have, we actually made a pitch pitch, to make some changes going into the playoffs. We made a couple tweaks, nothing major, back to those pod-related points I made earlier. But the ability to get something approved and then change for next week, the timing just doesn't work. So this is the plan we're going forward with, and we'll do some different things with game production. But in terms of fans in the building, this is exactly what we're going to do. Now, I will say this, not related specifically to tickets and ticket sales as it relates to the general building. I challenged our team 2 weeks ago and said, we've got a couple weeks here to plan. I want to know if we can find a way to try to bring some of the things that make Arrowhead special back. And our team came up with some really interesting ideas that did exactly that. They brought back some of the traditions and things we've been able to do in a different way that fits within our protocol. So we're going to launch, we've already launched a new tailgate product. So when you think about tailgating, it's very restrictive, only limited to the group you came with. We got to be masked and all those things. Well, how do you take that challenge and still do something cool? So we're making tailgate suites out in the parking lot for the playoff games. We're going to do 6 of them. We've already got just about sold out of those 6. And it's just a different way to tailgate. But when you think about the challenge I laid out of how do you celebrate what's special at Arrowhead, tailgating is one thing that the entire world looks at us for. And this is a huge platform, so we got to figure out a way to take advantage of that. So that's one thing that will be new for this game. Additionally, we looked at, one of the things I've talked to you guys about is the venue itself is divided into 11 zones. And that is specific to keep everybody as safe as possible by limiting them to any interaction. So you're basically limited to your space. Well, within those zones, we have 2 areas that we can create more gathering space that still gives you the 6 feet of distance, masked, and all the other protocols you have to go through. So we create these 2 all-inclusive clubs, basically, playoffs. One will be our Founders Club, and the other will be an afternoon. So those are new products that we've launched and rolled out for the playoffs to try to make the playoff games a little more special.
Let's go next to Matt Derrick. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Mark, thanks for your time as always. Yeah, I know that you don't have really any control over the secondary market other than what you can make available as far as tickets go. But, I know I've Ticket Broker today put out a report that the average ticket for this game is going to be $862. Even looking on Chiefs.com right now, I don't see any direct sales tickets, and I know you don't like to use the word sellout, but it looks like there's a fairly limited supply. What is there any concern about just the level of what the ticket prices are for this game, and are you expecting that there might be more, especially since Chiefs fans have seen a lot of playoff games, that a team like Cleveland might be more interested in ticket prices at that price point?
Yeah, I'll make a couple points to that. The last one's an interesting one. We've talked about the last couple of weeks is when you look at when we confirmed that we would be hosting playoff games, we started talking about, there are teams that haven't been in the playoffs for a long time, much like we were a few years ago. And when you get in, they're going to do everything they possibly can to be here. So we got to be prepared for that. So yeah, I think that will affect prices this week on the secondary market because Cleveland is one of those teams. A lot of pent up demand, especially with the win they had last night. A lot of people get excited to get on that bandwagon and be here and be part of this. I do think that as it relates to ticket pricing in the secondary market, we've talked about this a lot. The secondary market is the market. It's basically set and up and down based on demand and scarcity of tickets. When you start with a divisional game with 17,000 tickets, you're going to have an accelerated market. It just is what it is. What we did was we took all the available tickets and we made them available to our season ticket members. We sold out of our entire allotment for the most part. We don't like to say sell out because someone could call us on that and say, I could find a ticket somewhere, somehow, some way. We have holds for the visiting team. We have holds for the league. So there will be tickets sort of trickling back out here as those are used or not used. But we took that allotment and went to our season ticket members. We immediately sold out of those to our season ticket members. An interesting little tidbit to that was about 40% of those sales were from our season ticket members who hadn't attended a game yet this year. So when you think about that, those are fans who said, we're going to take the year off. We're going to push to next year. We're going to be safe. We're going to watch from home, but still be a part of it, still be committed to the team. 40% of those tickets went to people who hadn't been to a game. I think it also points to the safety protocols we put in place and the belief that you can come and be safe here at Arrowhead. It's one of the biggest feedback points, probably the highest grade we get from our fans on surveys, is it's actually safer than they expected when they got here. So I think all that plays into it. And when you have, back to your question, when you have that few tickets, you have a division game, you have an opponent who hadn't been in the playoffs in a while, it's going to drive ticket values up significantly.
Like we've got a couple more. We'll go Breland and then Matt. Go ahead, Breland.
I just wanted to follow up on something that you had talked about the last time we had talked to you. There was an initiative that you announced to sponsor some local businesses, especially with a focus on Black and minority-owned businesses. Can you just give us an update on where that is? Because that seems like a bit cool.
Yeah, really proud of our organization's ability to continue to do the things they do and continue to have an impact in our community in a very challenging time. To start this season off with over $1 million going to Ronald McDonald House with our Red Friday, and then last week to present a check to Cornerstones of Care for $1.6 million, which culminates 3 years of working with them. It's a great bookend of the season. We've talked a lot about the voting efforts that we did this year and the support we got from our players on that. Our players have put over $160,000 into this community this year that they have dedicated to the causes that they're supporting. And then specifically to your question, we've made commitments to 2 different organizations, AltCap and LISC, which are designed to do exactly what we're trying to do, is identify minority-owned businesses in our community that we can support in ways that they've already vetted out and have done the work to make sure that they're going to the right place and can actually have an impact. Interestingly, we have a list of companies within organizations within each one of those. So within AltCap and within LISC, they both provide lists. We're going back and forth with the players to figure out exactly which one we want to choose. So we've made the commitment. We are dedicated to do that. We honestly have gotten, I hate to say it, but distracted with the season and playoffs now. There's probably going to be a few weeks before we make our final decisions. But I have had discussions on a pretty regular basis with a couple of our key players saying, this is where we're headed. Here's a direction. We do frankly want to get our players' input on exactly where these dollars go. And we want their input on making that choice. And that's really what we're trying to finalize.
We'll go last to Matt McMullen. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Mark. So you touched on this at the beginning, but you mentioned that Clark challenged you and the organization to find a way to get fans in the building safely. Now that you can reflect on the regular season here, hopefully 2 games to go at Arrowhead, but how proud are you of your staff and operations, ticket sales, fan experience, everybody for finding a way to make this happen and let fans enjoy such a special season here at Arrowhead?
Yeah, I can't say enough about the work that they've done, and it's everyone, right? It's working with the testing capacity to make sure that our staff is safe to go and do their jobs. It's doing their jobs in a different, more challenging way to make sure that our fans are safe. I think some other people have said this as well. It's a pretty impressive feat for the National Football League to be, I believe, the only professional sports organization that has hosted every single regular season game of a season, and to do it successfully. And then to be the team that had the privilege of being first and hosting the very first game and doing it with almost 15,000 fans, and to be able to do that successfully every single week. What's not talked about is every single week there was a new challenge. Every single week our operations team was faced with something, and continuing to find a way to adapt and overcome is what makes you proud of the organization and what they've done. And not only our staff, the 200 or so people who work here every day, but the 2,000 or so who come in on game day, work for us for one day to make sure the Arrowhead experience is what it should be. It's been a real testament to the entire organization coming together and doing it in a really cool and safe way. And looking forward to doing it 2 more times.